Of course, to some extent, a grade 9 in GCSE English Literature is about knowing your text incredibly well. And my ultimate revision guide to Anita and Me is invaluable in that respect. However, you also need to know exactly what the examiner is looking for and have plenty of practice under time conditions. This video will give you a new Explore Another Moment question, explain the mark scheme, give you an opportunity to write your own outstanding response before sharing my grade 9 answer. I'll then dissect my response and show you exactly how and why it achieves full marks. So let's get on with it. You're watching Schofield on Shakespeare.
We're gonna build a palace and we'll be so proud. A palace where the roar of the crowd will tell the world our palace will last forever.
You can skip to any of the individual sections by clicking on the hyperlinks within the YouTube box below, although I would recommend watching this short video in full. So here's the mark scheme for question 1B from the OCR GCSE English Literature, exploring modern and literary heritage texts. But of course it's the top band, level 6, that we're really interested in. What have we got, and what does each bullet point mean in non-examination gobbledygook? Well, the overview for this level is that you have a sustained critical style. How do I interpret this? Well, to some extent this is about using the correct register, writing formally, and not ending up simply telling us what happens in the story rather than analysing the question. Your response needs to be informed and personal, so it's clear that you have a detailed understanding of the text as a whole and have developed your own ideas. You aren't just regurgitating, you are actively thinking and discovering anew each time you revisit an extract or an exam question. Your understanding is consistently perceptive. There are no slight misunderstandings, and you don't just state the obvious. You build upon your ideas to make more sophisticated points relevant to the question. You also need to have memorized plenty of quotations before entering that exam hall. This part of assessment objective 1 requires you to use wonderfully, naturally embedded quotations. It's worth bearing in mind what quotations are by definition, words and phrases copied from the text. So you need to make sure that your quotations are not unnecessarily long, and that you choose more interesting ones which will allow you to develop your ideas. When it comes to Anita and Me, the novel is jam-packed with similes, and I would recommend memorizing a good number of these. Given that these compare two things, there will usually be far more to write about. 4. If your quotations are incredibly simple and just justifying a basic point, it may not be possible to produce detailed and well-developed analysis. Challenge yourself. Stand out. Spend some time researching your own quotations, which are a little more complex, a little more sophisticated. And finally, you need to use relevant subject terminology. So don't just write "this suggests" or "this shows that," but be more precise, be more technical. Sile's simile suggests that, or the adjective views are predominantly negative. Time now for an exam-style question. Explore another moment in Anita and Me when Mina is troubled. Of course, in the full exam, you would have first spent 45 minutes on Part A, a comparison question between Anita and Me and an unseen extract. As the word another implies in question B, the extract from Anita and Me would have contained Mina being troubled in some way. The exam paper suggests that you should spend 30 minutes on section B. How much should you write? Well, ideally as much as possible, provided it is not waffle and shows a sharp insight into a moment when Mina is troubled and analyses interesting quotations in depth. OCR provide exemplar candidate work for this paper. Just type the phrase into Google and you will find it. And in the booklet from the summer of 2017, a candidate achieving full marks to this question, albeit writing about Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go rather than Sayal's Anita and Me, wrote around 500 words, which came out as 2¼ sides of A4. You should focus predominantly on just one moment. Although, to show your consistently perceptive understanding, you are likely to zoom out occasionally from your moments to develop your argument to reference ideas and themes in the novel as a whole. It's time to write your response. Of course, in the exam, you will not have your text to refer to. For this video, you need to make a judgment call as to whether you reference the text and have it by your side or not. If you're watching this video a week or so before your exam, you would already have planned possible questions and learnt appropriate quotations, and so you will probably complete this closed book. However, if the exam is a dim speck on the distance, or you have a mock approaching in which you will be allowed to use your text, then you may decide to spend a few minutes before starting to write, flicking through the novel to find a moment when Mina is clearly troubled, and Sayal uses some interesting language. Get started. Press pause now. Here's what I wrote. In Chapter 7, Mina is devastated following Sam Lowbridge's racist intervention at the spring fete. The latter initially complains about Reverend Ince's decision to spend charity money on a church roof, before broadening his ire to complain about Uncle Alan giving everything away to some darkies we've never met. He concludes his rant with, "This is our patch, not some walk's handout." Immediately after this disgracefully racist line, Mina felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. The simile suggests that Mina feels physically winded and is temporarily struggling to breathe due to shock and distress. Throughout the novel, she has been struggling with her desire to fit in within Tollington, whilst knowing that she looks different to virtually everyone else in her school and village. Although Sam is not directly referring to Mina in his speech, she feels violated and wounded by what she sees as confirmation that she is an outsider and someone implicitly perceived to be inferior to the native white population. This is confirmed by the description of her legs as watery and a hot panic softening her insides to mush. In other words, she's so shocked that she can hardly maintain her balance, whilst the personification of the hot panic confirms her loss of control. Hearing the racist abuse has resulted in her feeling as though she is disintegrating physically, boiling internally. Sayal uses additional imagery when she suggests that, following Sam's racist battle cry, it was as if the whole crowd had turned into one huge eyeball which swiveled slowly between me and Papa. So part of Mina's distress arises from the sense that everyone in the crowd is collectively staring between herself and her father, clocking their racial difference and wondering voyeuristically about how they will react. The image is a striking one, which wouldn't be out of place within a fantasy horror movie. It highlights Mina's feelings of being horribly exposed and vulnerable. The fact that the initial abuse was uttered by Sam Lowbridge causes Mina even more hurt and distress. She always felt that he was my mate who terrorized everyone else except me. The implication may be that within the world of Anita and Me, vile racist bile can come from a wide range of unexpected sources. Those previously considered friends, as well as innocent-looking, doddery old ladies. What is particularly interesting and desperately sad about the moment is the lack of support available for Mina from both her supposed best friend and her father. Mina knew that Anita would not hold me or take my hand, whilst her father is described as staring, seemingly unconcerned, gripping his bottle of whiskey like a weapon. It is clear that Mina is in urgent need for physical support, which Anita is not prepared to give, even on a small scale, i.e. by touching her. Meanwhile, Sile unleashes yet another simile by suggesting that the father is holding his prized bottle of whiskey incredibly tightly like a weapon. The image conjures up false hopes of the father fighting back against the racists, either verbally or physically, and thus modelling to his daughter that such racist language should never be tolerated. But the reality is that her tense, frozen father is trying to hide from the reality, leaving his troubled daughter alone, angry, messed up, and confused. What is it about this response which means that it would achieve 20 out of 20 or a grade 9? Let's dissect and analyse. Well, it starts with a short, clear introduction, which summarises the moment that I have chosen to write about. It is clear that I am answering the question, as shown in my use of the adjective devastated, a synonym for troubled, the key question word. Note that my summary of the moment is reasonably detailed. I don't just want to say that Mina is troubled following a racist outburst, but to briefly give additional details which will be referenced later on within my argument. For instance, it is significant that it is Sam Lowbridge who uses the disgraceful derogatory terms darkies and wogs. Within my first main paragraph, note that I immediately embed a short quotation. Less assured candidates might have written something like this. But there's no need on this occasion to copy out the full sentence from Sile's text and to separate it formulaically from the analysis with a colon. Instead, embed seamlessly. Remember that the full stop needs to come after the speech mark so that you close off the entire sentence, not just Sile's phrase. In the next sentence, we have some tight, concise analysis of the meaning and effect of the quotation. The image of the punch suggests that she feels physically winded and may be temporarily struggling to breathe due to shock and distress. Now, there are no words wasted here, no waffle or gushing such as "this amazing phrase creates a vivid effect." But is it thus far really detailed and well developed? Can a single sentence result in detailed and well developed analysis of a writer's use of language? Probably not. But note that my analysis of the quotation actually takes up 3 sentences, not 1. I want to explain one of the key factors behind Mina's reaction, and that is that she is one confused gal. She desperately wants to fit in, but knows that she looks different to everyone else and consequently is looked at differently. Sam Lowbridge's racist words are all the more hurtful because she already has a bit of a complex about being an outsider. So with the 3 sentences, it is clear that my analysis is detailed and well developed. Note also that I use the correct subject terminology, but not in a clunky, unnecessary separate sentence. Just slip it in seamlessly within your analytical sentence. Note the number of short embedded quotations within this paragraph. 4, with the longest containing 7 words. And it is clearly important that you have memorized sufficient quotations in order to give you enough to explore and talk about. Of course, actually Hot Panic has already been quoted within a longer phrase, but by re-quoting it here, I'm facilitating more precise, sharply focused analysis of language. I'm keen to try to unpick what the examiner is looking for within the phrase coherent critical style sustains in an informed personal response. Perhaps my informed personal viewpoint is seen in my analysis of the way everyone is looking at Mina and her father. With that one huge eyeball swiveling between the pair, I feel that this is voyeuristic. Even though the majority know that what has happened is wrong, they can't help getting a kind of secret pleasure from looking at them, wondering how they will respond to Sam's words. Note also my suggestion that this huge eyeball wouldn't be out of place within a fantasy horror movie. This analysis is clearly somewhat alternative, less bread and butter, and some might even view it as far-fetched. But for me, the very occasional imaginative suggestion, in conjunction with precise, sharply focused, developed analysis, may be helpful in convincing the examiner that you are an intelligent, exceptional candidate who really does think deeply about the effects of language, imagery in particular. As the paragraph goes on, note how I develop my analysis to make a broader comment about racism in the novel as a whole, and very briefly reference another racist moment from the novel, the old sweet-looking lady who objected strenuously having to reverse at a junction. This helps me meet the criteria of showing consistently perceptive understanding. For although you are analysing a single individual moment, this moment comes from a much longer text in which ideas are developed and explored more broadly. You need to show that you understand this. Note the non-formulaic way in which I begin my final paragraph. Some pupils might begin every paragraph in the same or similar ways with connectives and main clauses. For example, firstly, Mina is troubled because, another reason she is troubled is, finally, her reaction to being troubled is significant. And this is okay, as it shows a sharp, detailed focus on the task, and anyway, what's arguably more important is the quality of analysis which follows. Perhaps using synonyms for troubled might make it less formulaic and slightly better. I'm not sure. But returning to my paragraph, there is greater freedom and confidence within my phrasing. What is particularly interesting and desperately sad, which shows both passion and interest in the moment, but also that I can introduce insightful analysis in any way I choose. I don't have to be restricted to the formulaic or pre-prepared phrases provided by my teacher. I enjoy writing, I enjoy showing a consistently perceptive understanding of the text, and I'm also conscious that an examiner might, just might, want to have something lively and engaging to read within his or her pile of scripts. It's now time for my to-the-point concluding tips, and the first is about the importance of having memorized short but juicy quotations. You can see on screen now the proportion of my response, which consists of quotations. I appear to have used 12. Explore these quotations in detail, possibly on occasion relating your ideas to the rest of the novel as a whole. Thirdly, if a simile has been used, say it. If personification has been used, say it. Don't just write "this suggests," but say "this adjective suggests." Don't make a big fuss about knowing that a metaphor is a metaphor. This shouldn't take up an entire proud sentence. Instead, get on with explaining what the effect of the image is. Next, make sure that your analysis is well written but interesting to read. The last point seems really obvious, but you need to avoid shoehorning a moment you have pre-prepared, but which isn't sufficiently relevant to the question. So, the better you know the text, the more you have watched and absorbed this video, the better.
This has been a Schofield on Shakespeare production, exploring the Explore a Moment question for Anita and Me for GCSE English Literature. Many thanks for watching.